They called him Chin Mu, Blind Chin. In the alleyways of Hu's old quarter, his name echoed like a riddle. Some said he was a ghost. Others swore his carvings were done by spirits, not hands. But if you asked the elders, they'd point to a small wooden house near the perfumed river and whisper, "That's where the trees still speak." My Duyen didn't believe any of it. A photographer from San Diego, she'd returned to Vietnam chasing her grandmother's stories. Rice paper lanterns, imperial palaces, and the crafts the time had almost buried. One afternoon, lost in a web of incense alleys, she found the house. No sign, just wood, raw and gnarled, stacked like memory. She knocked. No answer. She peeked inside. A man sat cross-legged on the floor, his hands moving like water over a block of wood. His face was calm, his eyes clouded white. She gasped. He paused. "You wear foreign shoes," he said, "but your heart walks like it remembers this place." She froze. I'm just a tourist. No one just finds this door," he said. Then with a faint smile, "Sit, listen." For the next hour she watched him work. He didn't look, didn't hesitate. Every stroke of the chisel was precise, not from sight, but memory. Or maybe something deeper. The wood slowly revealed the phoenix, wings arched, head bowed, tail curling into fire. It was alive. "How do you do that?" she whispered. "I see with my hands," he said, "but I feel with what's left of my grief." She wanted to ask more, but silence felt sacred. As she stood to leave, he handed her a small carving, a bird with a cracked wing. "Your grandmother loved phoenixes," he said. Her breath caught. "How did you—" "Your voice," he said simply. "Same softness, same weight. If you've ever felt drawn to something you can't explain, like a place, a sound, or a stranger, this story is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and walk with us into the shadows, where even the blind can carve light." That night, my Duyen stared at the carving in her hand. The wing was imperfect, broken, but it didn't feel like a flaw. It felt like a message. The next morning, Mi Duyen returned, earlier than she intended. Something about the blind carver pulled at her, like a string left untied since childhood. Chin Mu was already working, the same cross-legged posture, the same slow rhythm of breath and blade. She didn't knock this time, just stepped inside and sat. He didn't flinch. "You came back," he said. "So did the bird." She pulled the small carving from her bag. "What does it mean?" "It's not for me to tell," he said. "Wood remembers what we don't dare speak." She looked around. The walls were lined with carvings. Animals, spirits, temples, war scenes, even quiet moments like a child sipping tea. Each piece was textured, as if meant to be read by fingertips instead of eyes. "You never sell them?" she asked. "Remember, they're not mine to sell, but they're yours. You were given to me by others, in silence, without being passing. I just gave them shape." She fell quiet, then asked, "What happened to your sight?" For the first time, his hands paused. "Oh," he said, "the kind that leaves shrapnel not just in the body, but in the soul." "American War?" she whispered. "Vietnamese grief," he answered. "The bullet didn't care who shot it, only that it found my eyes." She swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." "I'm not," he said. "When I lost my sight, I gained my second vision, the one I use now." Then he reached beside him, pulled out a small panel, and placed it in her hands. It was a carving of a woman kneeling beside a water basin, a reflection broken by ripples. Duyen's breath caught. "That's Bunguai," he said. Your grandmother. How could you know that? Her voice trembled. She told me, years ago. Told you? Before you were born. She came here, gave me her story. Said one day a granddaughter would return, carrying her softness. My Duyan held the carving tight, tears stinging. She passed last year, but she's here, he said, tapping her chest. And here, he added, tapping the wood. If you've ever found pieces of someone you lost in places they never told you about, this story is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and discover how memory lives not in museums, but in wood, voice, and touch. That evening, she asked if she could stay longer. How long? He asked. Until I can learn to see like you. He smiled faintly. And you'll be here a while. The first lesson was not in carving. It was in silence. For 3 days, Chin Mu made my Duyan sit on a wooden mat and say nothing. No tools, no sketches, just a block of camphor wood and her breath. You don't learn carving with your hands, he told her. You learn it by listening. The wood will speak if you stop speaking over it. At first, she thought it was some kind of meditation. But by day 2, she started to notice things. The way the grain shifted beneath her fingers, how one side of the wood felt drier, how certain knots hummed slightly when tapped. She even swore she heard a faint crack late at night, like the wood stretching in its sleep. On the 4th day, he handed her her first chisel. Not to cut, he said, to hold. Let it rest in your hand like a bird. It was lighter than she expected, yet carried a strange weight, as if it remembered every hand that had held it before hers. Now, he said, close your eyes. She hesitated, but I can see. That's the problem, he replied. You're still looking. Start feeling. With her eyes shut, the world changed. The smells sharpened. Pine, smoke, earth. Every sound grew louder. The creak of bamboo outside. The distant call of a boatman on the river, even Chin Mu's breath slow and steady. She placed the chisel against the wood. Don't press, he said. Let it rest. Find the direction. Every grain is a path. Follow it, don't fight it. Her first stroke was timid, the second jagged, the third smooth. There, he said. Did you feel it? She nodded. I think so. Then keep going. Hours passed. Time disappeared. She carved a simple curve, nothing more than a suggestion of a feather. But when she opened her eyes, it was enough. It was honest. You just listened, he said. That's more than most ever do. If you've ever been told to push harder, but deep down knew that listening would get you farther, this story is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist, where we carve not from force, but from quiet understanding. That night, my Duyan couldn't sleep, not because of noise, but because the wood she held earlier was still whispering in her hands. It was a crack in the wall that gave it away. Not wide, not obvious, just a narrow split in the wooden panel behind the sitting mat. Like something once sealed had begun to breathe again. My Duyan noticed it while cleaning. There's something back here, she said. Chin Mu didn't reply right away. Instead, he set down his tools and walked over slowly, tracing the wall with one hand. It's not locked, he said, but it's not open either. What's inside? A part of me I haven't carved in years. She waited. He sighed. If you want to see it, then see it. But don't bring the camera. Bring your silence. With that, he stepped aside. My Duyan reached forward, pressed the edge. The panel shifted with a soft groan, revealing a dark passage no wider than her shoulders. She ducked in. The air changed, cooler, older, dust and cedar. The room inside was small, windowless, but alive. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of carvings lined the walls. None were polished, none displayed. They sat raw, unfinished. Some were broken. Some looked like they'd been touched and abandoned mid-breath. But every one of them pulsed with something deeper than craft. Pain, love, regret. She approached one, a carving of a baby curled in a woman's arms, except the baby had no face, just a hollow space. Another showed a soldier, eyes closed, kneeling before a burning tree. These, she whispered, these are the ones I couldn't sell. Chen Mu's voice came from the doorway. The ones I made when no one was watching. Why hide them? Because some stories aren't finished. He walked to the center of the room, stopped beside a larger carving, a panel taller than he was, draped in a faded red cloth. This one, he said. I carved with no tools, just my nails and a rock, right after I lost my sight. May I see it? He nodded. She pulled the cloth down. Her breath hitched. It was chaos. Lines crossing lines, grooves slicing through wood like torn skin. But in the middle, a hand reaching upward. Blind, bleeding, beautiful. This is when I stopped being afraid of the dark, he said. You've ever kept something hidden, not because it was ugly, but because it was too real. This story is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and join us behind the wall, where the raw becomes sacred. That night, my Duyan returned to the front room and began sketching her own hidden panel. Not to show, not to sell, but to finally remember. The knock was firm, not hesitant, not polite. Chin Mu paused mid-stroke, his chisel resting just above a delicate flower he was carving. My Duyan opened the door. A man stood there, tall, mid-60s, sunburnt skin, eyes sharp like someone used to giving orders. Is he here? The man asked. You mean the carver? Shin Mu, the man said plainly. Tell him, Kwang has returned. She turned, unsure. There's someone here, he says his name is Kwang. Shin Mu didn't move. For a full 5 seconds, the room held its breath. Then, he said softly, let him in. The man stepped into the workshop like he'd once owned the floor beneath him. He didn't greet Duyan, didn't even look around. His eyes were on the old carver. It's been 30 years, Kwang said, and still you carved like nothing happened. Shin Mu didn't rise. I carved because something did happen. You could have written, Kwang snapped. Could have answered. And said what? Said you were alive? Said you didn't die that night when the outpost burned? My Duyan stood frozen. Outpost? Fire? What were they talking about? I did die, Shin Mu said. The part that trusted. The part that believed in cause, in orders, in war. Died that night. What you see now. He tapped his chest. It's just the one who stayed behind to listen. Kwang stepped forward, voice cracking. He buried empty boots. Your mother cried until her lungs collapsed. And now? Shin Mu asked. You came here to do what? Reclaim a ghost? Kwang pulled something from his satchel. A carving, faded, chipped. A tiger with one paw raised. You gave me this, he said. Back in 71, before we crossed the river. Shin Mu reached out, ran his fingers across it. It was the last thing I ever carved with both eyes. It kept me alive, Kwang whispered. When we were trapped, I thought you did too. There was silence, not cold, not angry, just heavy with time. My Duyan finally spoke. Were you soldiers? Brothers in arms, Kwang said. Before war made us strangers. Shin Mu handed the tiger back. You kept it. That's enough. Kwang nodded quietly. You ever carve for peace now? I carve so war doesn't return, he said. If you've ever met someone from your past carrying a memory you thought long buried, this moment is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and walk with us through the fault lines of silence, where even estranged hands might still touch the same wood. That night, Kwang slept on the floor by the fire. He didn't ask for forgiveness, and Chin Mu didn't offer it, but the tiger stayed between them. Today, Chin Mu said, you carved something that has no shape. I Du Yen blinked. What do you mean? You carved grief, he replied. Not yours, someone else's. She thought he was joking, but his expression was calm, still, like always. He placed a block of soft rosewood in front of her. Its scent was sweet and strangely heavy, like a flower blooming too late. Close your eyes, he said, and listen. Kwang sat nearby, silent, watching. He had been there for 3 days now. Not quite friend, not quite stranger. Sometimes he would stare at the old carvings on the wall. Sometimes he would hum a tune no one else recognized. But this time, he was listening too. My Du Yen closed her eyes. Her fingers touched the wood. It felt unsettled, as if the grain was trembling under her palm. What do you feel? Chin Mu asked. Hesitation, she said. Then carve that. She hesitated. Start. The first few lines were shallow, curved, uncertain, then sharper, then a groove that split unexpectedly, like a sudden cry. She didn't plan the shapes. She followed the tension in her fingertips, the stiffness, the way her wrist flinched. It was not beautiful. It was not clean. It was honest. When she opened her eyes, the panel looked raw, like a wound or a confession. She turned to Chin Mu. I don't know what this is. He stood, ran his hands across it. His touch slowed near the center. Here, he said. You stopped breathing. Why? I remembered the moment my grandmother died, she whispered. The phone call, the silence after. He nodded. Then you carved well. She looked again. But it's not finished. It's never finished, he said. Grief becomes part of the grain. You just learn to follow it. If you've ever created something that felt too close, too raw, too real to show the world, this moment is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and walk with us through the places where the chisel does more than carve. It remembers. That night, Kwang came to her quietly and placed something in her hand. The tiger carving. You saw something today? He said. So did I. She held it, and for the first time, the tiger didn't feel like an old relic. It felt like a path. The fire came just after midnight. Not a blaze, but a sharp hiss. The scent of burning lacquer and a flash of orange under the eaves. My Du Yen was the first to see it. She had gotten up for water, and through the window, she caught the flicker. Fire! She shouted. Chu Chin! Chu Kwang! They burst from their mats. Chin Mu didn't ask where. He smelled it. Kwang was already throwing water. Buckets, wet towels, hands. The fire wasn't big, but it had caught near the old shelf, the one with the tiger carving. By the time they doused it, the air was heavy with smoke and ash. Some of the pieces were scorched. One of Chin Mu's earliest carvings, a lotus in bloom, was blackened at the edge. Du Yen checked the shelf. The tiger was gone. Kwang stood at the doorway, breathing hard. It wasn't an accident. What? She asked. That's not how fire travels. Someone lit it. She froze. But who would... Chin Mu's face was unreadable. Grief wears many faces. So does guilt. Silence. Then Kwang spoke, low, bitter. You think I did this? I think, Chin-Mu said quietly. You've been holding a flame for 30 years. The words hit like stone. Kwang clenched his fists. You disappeared, left us thinking you were dead. You were our brother, and yet you carved in silence while the rest of us lived with ghosts. I didn't disappear, Chin-Mu said. I was abandoned. They stood in the smoky light, not shallow, just heavy, real. Then Du Yen stepped between them. Enough, she said. The tiger's gone. But maybe that's the only way it could ever rest. She turned to Chin-Mu. Maybe now you can carve something new. And to Kwang. And maybe you can stop chasing what can't be returned. If you've ever watched something important burn and found in the ashes the truth you never dared speak, this moment is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and witness how even fire can become part of the carving, if we let it. Later that night, she found the tiger, half burned, floating in the river. She didn't cry. She wrapped it in cloth and placed it on the workshop wall, next to the cracked lotus. Two symbols, not of beauty, but of what survived. They worked in silence for 2 more weeks. No talk of fire, no talk of blame, only wood, tools, breath, the rhythm of restoration. But something had shifted in Chin-Mu. He carved less, watched more. His hands lingered on the edge of things, not out of hesitation, but reverence, like someone preparing to hand over a sacred book. Then one afternoon, he handed my Du Yen a flat square panel, not too big, jackfruit wood, golden and warm. This, it said, will be your first piece, entirely yours, but it must bear my name. She looked up. You want me to carve your name? No, he said. You must carve my signature. She blinked. I don't know what that is. He smiled faintly. Exactly? She held the wood for hours, unsure. She knew his style. Deep curves, layered tension, sudden quiet in the grain. But what was her signature to a man who hadn't signed anything in decades? She finally carved a hand, open, empty, reaching upward, fingers slightly gnarled as if they'd been sculpted by time. Then beside it, she added a second hand, smaller, smoother, gently resting against the first, not holding, just touching. When she was done, she placed it in his lap. He ran his fingers over it, slow, careful, and then he nodded once. That, he said, is mine. Tears stung her eyes. Chu-Chin, will you teach others? He shook his head. No need. I taught you. She tried to speak, but he raised a hand. Wood has memory, Du Yen, but so do hands. What I gave you, you'll give others, without even realizing it. That night, as she packed the bags for Saigon, not to leave forever, but to bring the story elsewhere, he called her one last time. One more thing, he said. He handed her the tiger carving, the one half burned, still smelling faintly of river ash. But I thought, even broken tigers deserve a home, he said. If you've ever been given something small that carried a weight you didn't understand, until years later, this moment is yours. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist and stay with us as we pass from one soul to the next, one cut at a time. As the boat carried her down the perfumed river, Mi Du Yen didn't look back. She didn't need to. The signature was already in her hands.